the fire pattern, when you look at where the fire started, it just doesn't add up that one fire and the second fire are two separate events.
The devastating fires that tore through Los Angeles' Pacific Palisades neighborhood this January. Was it an act of God, or was it an entirely preventable tragedy? My name is James Lee, and you're watching Beyond the Headlines on Breaking Points. On January 7th, 2025, a devastating wildfire tore through the Pacific Palisades, claiming the lives of 7 people, destroying thousands of homes and forcing over 200,000 people to evacuate. City and state officials blamed high winds and dry conditions. But one local resident, Jeremy Weinberg, says that's not the full story. He points to another fire that started on January 1st, that, according to satellite imaging, seemingly started in the exact same spot, positing that the smaller fire was never fully extinguished. And in the subsequent 6 days, missed warnings, ignored reports, and critical infrastructure failures then allowed it to reignite into the catastrophe that followed. Joining us today on Breaking Points is Jeremy Weinberg to lay out what he saw, what the city did and didn't do, and how one of the largest fires in California's history might have been a preventable one. Thanks for coming on the show today.
James, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Yeah. The first thing I want to say is, I understand that you lost your home in the wildfire, along with many memories, sentimental keepsakes. So, I just want to acknowledge that the last few months for you probably haven't been too easy. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about
it. I appreciate that.
And I know you personally documented a lot of this disaster from start to finish. So I want to start with that timeline. You said the fire on January 7th was a reignition of a blaze that started on January 1st. So can you walk us through the details of that January 1st fire? Because I don't think many people even know that happened. And why do you think those two fires are related?
Well, so the January 1st fire was, ignited by a firework, as we, all acknowledged, on Via La Costa. And, when I went out of my house and I looked right up, the entire, sky was orange. There was 4 different helicopters. I believe one was, Cal Fire and 3 from LA Fire Department that were dropping water over the course of like a 2.5, 3-hour period. We had a dozen or so fire engines that were on the scene in front of everyone's house on Chastain Parkway, making sure that they were creating a barrier. But what there wasn't was a representation of what happened on January 1st in the media. I didn't see any reports that there was any sort of thermal imaging that was done. And on top of that, I think where the fire started on Via La Costa, is behind a gate on a dead-ended road, So for it to start in the exact same spot and go the exact same direction and where the burn zone was, and to have no confirmation that hot spots weren't there or thermal imaging was done and we didn't see anything, would I think change the narrative a little bit.
You mentioned that the city had not gone up to do any kinds of checks, or there were no patrol officers or thermal imaging done. I know you have a couple of images that you've shared that seem to indicate that there were some hot spots. Can you talk a little bit about that?
So if you look at like the Sentinel-2 satellites, right? NASA has satellites. There's different, satellites that, are up in outer space that are constantly taking images. Think of it as, Google Earth, but, to the next degree. And you start to look at, different colorations of B12, B8, B12. These are just different variations of color that, look at moisture, that look at, dryness, vegetation, and so forth. You'll see that on January 2nd, there's still it shows that there's still a radiation of, radiated color of heat. Okay. And then moving into the days after, we then end up with, the January 7th event. So
yeah, I just want to be clear about what the city did and didn't do between the 1st and the 7th. So they'd sent you some text saying that the original fire, the January 1st fire was extinguished. Then did you get any notification of people going up there to do the thermal imaging? Did you get any follow-ups from the fire department to say, hey, yep, we've done the check, it's fully put out? What can you tell us about that?
We received a text message on January 1st, two text messages. One around 2 a.m. saying you might need to evacuate. This was an official text message from the Los Angeles Fire Department acknowledging there was a fire on January 1st. Then we received a text message, I believe around the 4 o'clock hour in the morning, saying that the fire is out. All clear. From that point on, the helicopters were no longer seen in the sky. And for the days after, I didn't see any helicopters. Now, I wasn't looking at the sky 24 hours a day for 5 days in a row, but I didn't see a helicopter, nor did anyone receive any sort of report or update in the neighborhood that thermal imaging was done or we have 100% confirmation containment on this fire. There are no hotspots, etc. As we know from other fires in the past, that fires tend to leave a hotspot for days after, 7 days, 10 days after a fire. So I don't know why no one had thought that there might have been a hotspot after the fire.
Okay,
So
so we have the big fire on January 7th, takes out thousands of homes. What do you know about the aftermath in terms of the investigations? Because based on the claims that you're making, if they end up being true, right, we're talking about huge ramifications in terms of accountability, possible criminal negligence on the part of the state and the city. Do you have any sense of what's going on there? Is there like a cover up? Are people still talking about this?
you have what I 75 or whatnot ATF agents investigating, reigniting another fire, trying to come on. Okay, come on. I'm going to tell you I'm going to tell you what I think and what I see. And what I see is if someone has to be if someone takes accountability for this and they connect the fires, there is hundreds of billions of dollars at stake. Because now you have a fire that started that wasn't properly put out that literally annihilated the 90272 zip code. Okay? Now, if they come up with they're different, we did thermal imaging, which they didn't, or they haven't confirmed that they did. So, on January 2nd and 3rd, it's confirmed that there were no hotspots. This was something else. And this is why it's a whole different conversation. But knowing that the people on the inside knew what they knew about January 1st, knew that the reservoir was empty, didn't have a fire engine that was sitting there, as Gavin Newsom and the city said they were going to stage fire engines across the city. The Palisades has, I believe, 8 fire engines between fire station 69 and 23. We didn't have one. And when you look at the fire pattern, when you look at where the fire started, it just doesn't add up that one fire and the second fire are two separate events.
Yeah, yeah. The final question I wanted to ask you today is, by speaking out about this, what are you hoping to accomplish? Is it public awareness? Is it accountability that we've been talking about? Is it reform? What would be an ideal outcome for you?
Well, first off, I want people to realize that the people in the Palisades, people in Altadena, we're all people. And you know, we all lost things that were really special to us. And it's not about, these are bigger homes and everyone has insurance and, the things I read online that are just mean spirited and people saying, you should have put the fire out yourself. Um, you know, um, a lot of people that lived in the Palisades lived there their entire life. it was a very, very, very family driven town. And what we knew was our world was our neighbors and the people we grew up with. What I want is accountability. That's what I want. That's what I want to happen. I want there to be accountability, and I want for someone to take responsibility for this event. I want someone to say that they fucked up and that they're sorry, and we have to do something about that. Not just ignore us and basically have us fend for ourselves and to figure out what the next move is.
Yeah.
Um,
I think a lot of people share the same frustration with you as a resident of California in terms of the leadership of California. It's a deep blue state. I think that leads to accountability issues where there's no repercussions if somebody does something wrong, whether it be Gavin Newsom or Karen Bass or whoever else. And it's not just in the issue of fire, it's across all kinds of other issues like homelessness, crime, other things like that. So I think hopefully, we can use this as an example, or hopefully the residents of California can kind of come together and demand that kind of change that we need in this state. So thank you so much, Jeremy, for your time today, your courage in speaking out, and all the research that you've compiled. I know you've spent countless hours looking into all the maps, the satellite imaging, everything like that. So thank you so much for coming on the show today.
you're welcome. I'd show you. So, I love martinis. So one of the things I was able to recover from the house was my martini shaker that I used to shake my martinis with every night. So, thank you, James, for having me. And all right, thank you.
That is it for me today. If you want more stories that the mainstream media is unwilling to tell, head on over to my YouTube channel, 5149 with James Lee. The link will be in the description below. And as always, thank you so much for your time today, and keep on tuning into Breaking Points.